Hey guys, welcome to another Friday video. Today we're checking out the X99 or LGA 2011 V3 platform. We've got a bundle here consisting of a micro ATX motherboard. We've got a 6-core 12-thread CPU and a 16GB quad-channel DDR4 memory kit. Now this is a review sample I received from AliExpress. You're looking at just over $170 and all the links are down below in the description. On the used market, there are a lot of older Xeon workstation and server processors, especially of interest if you like a lot of cores. And what they do, they build brand new mainboards that are compatible with these CPUs. And yeah, the value is pretty decent. This platform is fast. So the system, the bundle that we're looking at today is pretty fast out of the box. It will run at 2.6 gigahertz with all cores. However, there is a little overclocking mod. All you have to do is modify the BIOS. So it sounds a little bit scary, but it's actually a pretty straightforward process. And then the processor will have all cores running at 3.2 gigahertz, which gives us a nice performance boost. So on the left, we've got X79 and here we've got X99. And the main difference is with X79, we can use CPUs from the Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge generation. So you're looking at 2011 version 1 and 2011 V2 CPUs, whereas here we can support processors from the Haswell generation. 2011 V3 is what you want to look out for. These processors have higher IPC. They also support slightly newer CPU instructions. We're also getting native USB 3 and SATA 3, as well as M.2 NVMe support. The CPU is a Xeon E5-2620 V3. We have 6 cores, 12 threads, 22nm process, Haswell generation, and 15 megabytes of cache, as well as a 85-watt TDP. The frequency depends on the load. A single thread can run at up to 3.2 gigahertz, whereas all cores will run at 2.6 gigahertz. But as mentioned earlier, with the BIOS mod, we can have the CPU run at 3.2 gigahertz with all the cores. Here we have a list of all the CPU instructions. AVX2 and FMA3 are new to this generation. And if you're using software that can take advantage of these instructions, then you will see a nice performance boost. And now we're going to have a closer look at the mainboard. This is the mainboard box, and inside we have the mainboard, a fan adapter, I/O shield, there's a SATA cable and a bunch of screws to use the fan adapter. Also a CD-ROM with some drivers on it, because this platform is not only compatible with Windows 10, also some older operating systems. The fan adapter screws onto the LGA 2011 frame, and then you can use these coolers with the standard AMD mounting mechanism, not only sunflower type coolers, but also tower coolers. I'm using a different cooler. This one screws directly onto the 2011 frame and has a couple of heat pipes as well as an RGB LED fan, and the performance is pretty decent for this processor. You can get this cooler for around $16 to $18 on AliExpress. And I continue using the IC graphite thermal pad. Worked beautifully for the Xeon processors. Go with the larger 40x40mm version and you shouldn't have any issues in regards to temperature. So here we've got the LGA 2011 socket. We have a quad channel DDR4 memory interface, which works as expected. We have VRM cooling here that do a decent job at cooling the components, but these chokes here, they can heat up quite significantly. Under load, I saw almost 80 degrees, so it is recommended to have a bit of airflow around this area. 4-pin CPU connector, ATX connector, 6 SATA 3 ports. We've got 2 M.2. This one is for SATA M.2 SSDs, and this one is for PCI Express NVMe SSDs. We have a PCI Express 3.0 16X, and that's a 1X connector here for maybe a sound card, a USB 3 controller, or other peripherals. Battery was not included, has to do something with shipping. I'm using a 1TB NVMe SSD from HIK Vision. Worked beautifully. We're getting full speed, almost 3.5 gigabytes per second. So this confirms that the M.2 support on this mainboard works at full speed. At the back we have 4 USB 2, 4 USB 3. gigabit Ethernet and audio, and these two solutions are provided by chips from Realtek. Front panel audio goes here. Here you can hook up a programmer to flash the BIOS. Here you could solder onto some pins to get a serial port. The 3-pin fan connector here for case fan. You can clearly see most here. This is for the PC speaker, a front USB for 2.0 and a front USB for 3.0. And here we have the front panel connectors for your case. The black ones are to turn the computer on. Blue ones is the reset switch. The orange one is for the hard drive activity LED, and the green one is for the power LED. And here we have a 4-pin fan connector which supports PWM. On this platform, sleep mode works without any issues. However, if you modify the BIOS to boost your clock speed on the processor and you put your machine into sleep mode, it will default back to non-overclock settings, so you will have to reboot your machine to get the overclocked performance. All in all, I was pretty satisfied with this mainboard. I didn't run into anything that didn't work as advertised. We're getting full USB 3, full SATA 3, the M.2 PCI Express NVMe was also fully working. The BIOS, as with these mainboards, it's fairly basic and locked down. I don't have an unlocked processor to test if I could change the multiplier, but there was an option in the BIOS to do so, and modifying the BIOS, which we will take a look at a little bit later in the video, was also pretty straightforward. The only slightly negative issue might be the VRM cooling, so just make sure you have decent airflow in your case. This platform supports DDR4 memory, either standard desktop RAM or registered ECC memory. This is a 16 gigabyte kit. The memory modules are from Samsung. The memory speed that these processors support is fairly low, only 1866 megahertz, but because it's a quad channel interface, that doesn't matter. So this means you can use some cheaper and slow memory. Now, watch out a little bit with memory compatibility. It's not guaranteed that every type of memory will work. So this might be one of those cases where buying a bundle gives you a little bit of security that everything will work together. I ran the memory read benchmark from IDA64 and we're getting over 40,000 megabytes per second of data transfer. We're using a Thermaltake 750 watt power supply. Stock under idle conditions, 49 watts for the entire system, running Cinebench R20, 101 watts. Applying the overclock through the BIOS mod, the idle power consumption is now 61 watts and under load 126 watts. To make sure we're not bottlenecked and we can really see what the CPU is capable of doing, we're using a Radeon RX 5700 with 8 GB of video memory. And now let's have a look at some benchmarks. In Cinebench R15, 797, and in Cinebench R20, we're getting 1845. And now we're gonna check out some games, and this is the stock performance out of the box. We will later look at overclocking and see what sort of performance boost we can get. Let's start with some games that are pretty optimized using the Vulkan API. First up, Strange Brigade. Look at that, around 180 to 200 FPS. This is with high details at 1080p, very smooth experience. Doom, a little bit older, and here once again the Vulkan API shows what is possible. We are running sometimes into the 200 FPS engine cap, also with high details. And another Vulkan game, Wolfenstein 2, 1080p high details, and once again well over 100 FPS. Here we have Shadow of the Tomb Raider, 1080p with the DirectX 12 API and also high details. Runs fairly well. There are a few more demanding scenes in this game where the performance might drop a little bit, but this platform has enough muscle to run this game quite well. Let's have a look at two popular games, Fortnite and Apex Legends. Both maxed out. So here we have Fortnite 1080p, epic details, and seems to run just fine. This is with the DirectX 12 option. And Apex Legends, also 1080p with all the details maxed out. Another game that runs really well on this platform. two games that struggle a little bit on this platform are from Ubisoft. We have Far Cry 5. This is a game known to want a fairly high clock speed rather than many cores, and it will sometimes dip below 60, but for the most part it is actually quite playable. We're using high details at 1080p. And we can see the same thing with Far Cry New Dawn. 1080p, high details. Again, it will run at 60 FPS most of the time, but it will dip below depending on what's going on the screen. Hitman 2, here I went into the options and I maxed everything out. 1080p seems to be running fairly well. In this game, there are other levels where the performance might be lower than what you see in this level. This one is not as demanding, but for the most part, Hitman 2 should run fairly well on this machine. I always test older games like Dirt 3. We're getting, 180 FPS with 4x anti-aliasing and also 1080p and ultra details. And this platform is legacy compatible. You can install Windows 8, Windows 7, 32-bit or 64-bit, and pretty sure we can get Windows XP going on this platform as well. And now let's talk about overclocking. I found a really good video tutorial by MyConst. I will put a link down below in the video description. And basically what this entails is modifying the BIOS. So there's no need to install any software drivers. So this is a permanent hardware mod, so to speak. And what it will do, it will boost all the cores to the maximum turbo boost, which is 3.2 gigahertz. The short version is you use AFU DOS to dump your BIOS, then you remove the microcode, then you inject the turbo boost driver, and then you also disable the C3 and C6 power states. And after that, you flash your modified BIOS with AFU DOS, turn on the machine, and voila, your processor is now running at locked 3.2 gigahertz on all the cores. In Cinebench R15, we're going from 797 to 963, and in Cinebench R20, we're getting from 1845 to 2202. So that's a nice performance boost. And let's have a look at some games. So I tested Far Cry 5 and Far Cry New Dawn because those two games struggled with the processor at stock settings. And look at that. We are now over 60 FPS most of the time. I did see a few small dips still, but compared to the stock performance, the game runs a lot smoother and a lot faster with a much higher average FPS. And as always, does it run Crysis? Yeah, it does a fairly decent job at running Crysis. Not quite constant 60 FPS. This game is just simply very unoptimized, but most parts of the game you will see 60 FPS with a few dips below. So yep, this is another platform that does a fairly good job at running Crysis. So guys, let's talk about this platform. I didn't run into any major issues like we had with X99. Everything worked as advertised. The X99 platform is more modern. We're getting native USB 3 and SATA 3 as well as M.2 NVMe support and support for the newer LGA 2011 V3 processors from the Haswell generation, which means we're getting higher IPC, but also a few new CPU instructions. Performance out of the box was pretty decent, but this platform really shines once you modify the BIOS and have the processor have all the cores run at the maximum turbo boost, which is 3.2 gigahertz for the CPU. And then we're getting some very decent performance. And once again, I can only show you the performance and I can share my opinion. In the end of the day, it's up to you to have a look at your market. What does a Ryzen system cost? What's available on the used market? And then you need to make your own decision. Also keep in mind that the RAM and the CPU, these are used parts. There's no CPU cooler included. And although this mainboard is new, it does come from AliExpress. And if anything goes wrong, I wouldn't be too confident with the warranty, let's put it that way. Also, not everyone is into modifying the BIOS, but this is the kind of setup I really like. An affordable bundle, and if you are willing to take a little bit of a risk, you can extract some decent performance out of this platform. And this is really the heart of this channel, striking a bargain using parts that other people consider to be obsolete, and by doing a little bit of modification and extracting extra performance and still using such a platform on a daily basis. Using this as your workstation for video editing and browsing the internet, it should work perfectly fine. And also with other CPUs, there are lots of options. You can get unlocked CPUs, you can get CPUs with 8, 12 and maybe even more cores. I have on order a 8-core CPU, which should also support the BIOS mod and then run at 3.2 gigahertz on all 8 cores for around $50 to $60. So that could also be really good value. So guys, all in all, I really can't fault this bundle in terms of performance and compatibility. It has given me absolutely no issues, perfect stability. So in that regard, I can definitely recommend it. Whether or not you want to buy from AliExpress and whether or not you consider the pricing to be good value, that's really up to you, and it does depend on where you live. For example, I live in a regional area, so getting free shipping matters to me quite a bit. It can add up quickly. But in the end of the day, it's your call. So now it's up to you. Leave your comments down below. What do you think about this system? As always, what else do you want to see? I have the board now, and I can buy some other parts to test out other configurations and bundles. And yeah, I might actually be tempted to use this as my daily driver just for testing. At the moment, I'm using a Ryzen 2600 system, which works fine, but you can do video editing just as well on such a machine. And yeah, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Give it a like, share the video with your friends, and I shall see you soon with another one.